What up, Punk and Petty, the punkest and the pettiest, coming at you with another video. So in today's video, we will be talking about how well the settlement of Megaton in the Capital Wasteland can hold up against a siege or raid. Now, I will be talking about the Megaton that we see when we first come across it once exiting the vault, because as in many games, the main character tends to alter or improve upon the settlement, and I want it to be when it's the most candid and unchanged by some chosen one. So according to the internet, because I don't want to count them all myself, there are 28 named characters in the settlement along with 10 unnamed NPCs as well as 4 children of Adam, bringing the population count up to 42 people. I do wonder what the real population of the settlement would be if it was in real life, but that's hard to know. I suppose you would need to calculate how big the crater of a 1 megaton bomb would make, well, I guess if it doesn't explode, and then somehow calculate the population density and turning up like 42 up to how big it would be in a real life crater. But I'm no mathematician, and if you are, let me know what that number would be. But anyways, let's continue. So this population number does matter because once the watchtowers spot an enemy on the approach, there will most likely be some sort of warning sent out to everyone so they can prepare. When this happens, I believe those who don't have anything to tie them down to Megaton will leave, similarly to how many people chose to flee the oil refinery in Mad Max 2 when it came under attack by raiders. Those who aren't fighting fit will most likely retreat to their homes, while anyone who has weapons and the will to use them will defend the front gate to the best of their abilities. Now, as is, without going forward and using just this information, we can understand that when a fighting force has nowhere else to flee and is surrounded, they will tend to fight to the last man rather than surrender, depending on who's surrounding them. If this were the Brotherhood of Steel from the Citadel surrounding them, it would be wise to assume that it would be in everyone's best interest to surrender, as they will most likely treat them far better than any other force would. But on the other hand, if it were the gunners, slavers, raiders, or God forbid super mutants, you can bet your bottom dollar they'll go out with a bang. So in this scenario of a siege or raid, we are going with the latter, and those in Megaton are going down swinging. Anyone with the gun, the old and the young, excluding children, and those who haven't already fled are combatants. So now let's talk about what kind of weaponry these settlers would have. Having the will to fight an enemy is one thing and will go a long way, but if you're fighting a laser rifle with sticks and stones, my money's on the one with the real firepower. So when you look around the settlement, you can see that the lookout on the catwalk above the gate is equipped with a hunting rifle, and then there's also a protectron with a laser weapon guarding the front gate. Inside the settlement, we can see citizens having low to mid-tier weapons spanning from a regular .32 revolver all the way up to a Chinese assault rifle. In the wide open, depending on who they're fighting, these weapons wouldn't be the greatest, but since they're in close quarters in an urban warfare setting, their odds of being effective fighting force is greatly increased. Now, one thing we must talk about is the defenses and layout of where this fight will take place, because this is also an important factor. Like we discussed just before, this engagement will primarily occur inside an urban setting of Megaton itself. Here's an analogy to consider. In mixed martial arts, someone who is a wrestler or great at jiu-jitsu is better in a very personal ground match. But that fighter understands that the fight will not only occur on the ground and will start standing up with strikes, so they also have to be great at that part as well. Just like how a raid or siege on Megaton won't immediately occur inside the settlement where the citizens are at their best, but rather it will start outside on the perimeter of the community where the siege will start. So how is Megaton going to properly defend itself in such a scenario? Glad you asked. Around the settlement, there is very rugged terrain with much to use as cover, some even providing an elevated position for raiders to fire from. That's not to say that there aren't any cons to all of these pros. All this rugged terrain will prevent any vehicles from being used, that is, if any raider group can organize themselves well enough to get mechanics to collaborate with scavengers to find working vehicles to maintain and put together, which is doubtful. Also, Megaton itself has firing positions on the inside of the walls as well as the catwalks above the gate. While these elevated defensive positions do provide a great vantage point, they have little to no defense against oncoming fire and would make the person manning these defenses to become easily suppressed or taken out. During any ongoing firefight, I believe the attackers would have the advantage in this engagement. The walls themselves, fashioned from scrap metal and old aircraft parts, are tall but could be climbed with the use of ladders, although I would personally be hesitant to do so because with all the metal being used in its construction, it has long since been weathered and turned into jagged sharp edges and rusted beyond belief, and I don't see anybody handing out tetanus shots anytime soon. If you were able to scale this rusted palisade, you would then need to hope that you climbed on a part of the wall that's next to a building on the other side that you could jump onto, otherwise you're going to plummet down the other side, breaking bones, spraining ankles, or even just plain dying. So with that being said, the walls in my opinion are a no-go, and that leaves only the front gate as the most viable point of entry for the raiders. Once the attacking force takes out the watchtowers and gate guards, they will have free reign to enter inside. Once inside, they will have 3 ways that they can move: down the hill towards the community center, or left or right, which brings them amongst the buildings. Moving forward down the center towards the crater will be a tough position to take, as you'll be facing overlapping fire from all varying levels of the walkways, which will be a death trap. Advancing left and right amongst the buildings would be the better option, as you will have split up their attention to either side, although you will be facing urban warfare and will probably face many casualties. One thing to take note of is you would only be performing an attack like this if you already had superior firepower or numbers. Raiders who are attacking Megaton will probably already have ambushed many traders and caravans on the roads, and perhaps even other settlements, meaning they have experience and weapons. Very few inside Megaton will have had this much experience, and those who do have experience like Lucas Sims and Jericho won't be enough to turn the tide against the attackers, in my personal opinion. Once the raiders have made it halfway through the settlement, they will have even amounts of firing positions, but chances are the settlers won't even have the numbers of firepower, although nestled inside the Megaton armory, Deputy Steele, a Mr. Gusty robot, will provide some great defensive and offensive capabilities, but even then, I doubt it would be able to withstand the numbers of the raiders. Outside of weaponry and defensive capabilities of Megaton, the people themselves also may turn the tide for the attackers. Moriarty of Moriarty's Saloon has proven himself to be the type who will take advantage of a situation that comes his way, and I wouldn't put it past him to sell out his community for his own salvation. Mr. Burke, a spy or operative, or should I say a thug for Alistair Tenpenny, is already looking for a way to destroy Megaton, so perhaps he would even sell out the community or even help during the attack if it meant the destruction of Megaton. Speaking of Mr. Burke and the destruction of the town, he was already planning on doing so with the undetonated atomic bomb in the center. One cannot simply state that it's dangerous for these people to be near this bomb, let alone construct a town around it. It's astronomically stupid to have built a town in the bomb's crater. Shit flows downhill, and it wouldn't take an expert with the footballer's throwing arm to toss an explosive over the wall and have it roll down next to the bomb, setting it off. Raiders are good at killing and shooting guns and blowing things up, but they aren't necessarily scouting experts, so what if they don't know about the bomb and use explosives during the attack? What if Mr. Burke uses the ongoing fight to plant explosives and escape to Tenpenny's tower for the largest fireworks display in the capital wasteland? This atomic bomb alone makes the defense of this place incredibly hard. Chemmed up raiders will not care and use whatever deadly force they want. Meanwhile, the citizens will be cautious when firing and probably not utilize any explosives themselves, giving the attackers the advantage. The only thing that would give Megaton the edge would be its almost failing water supply and purification plant inside the walls, as well as the doctor's office. So their best bet would be to hold the attackers at the gates or even outside the walls until help arrives. Inside, they have access to all the water they need as long as they need it, as long as the purification plant is up and running, but the only downside is their food situation. They have no crops and they have only one Brahmin, otherwise they rely on traders for scavenged goods or meat. Their situation would be incredibly dire, but at least they have Doc Church to patch them up anytime they catch a bullet. If I were a raider trying to capture Megaton, I would besiege the settlement and put riflemen around the circumference outside and put a bullet in anyone trying to leave the only entrance. Once that's all covered, I'd allow many of my fellow raiders to do what they do best and ambush any caravans heading to Megaton for trade and restock my supplies, because this is a trading center after all. Sure, they may send riflemen to the watchtowers or gatehouse catwalk, but those positions are easy to take out, so I'd almost welcome them doing so if it meant I could slowly pick away at their fighters until they take the hint that it's not smart to go up there. Over time, they will have run out of food and be forced to surrender or take the fight to us while starving, funneling themselves through the only exit where it will be like shooting fish in a barrel. Over time, I could see Moriarty possibly gathering some supporters and starting some sort of mutiny once everyone's starving enough. Sure, there, we'll let them help us take the town, and then we'll make a deal for their safety. But after that's all done and we got the town, we'll just capture them and everyone else remaining inside for a hefty profit at Paradise Falls. If you know, you know. If not, trust me, it's a great vacation spot and they're handing out necklaces. Once victorious, we have the town, and on top of that, we have the greatest weapon in the capital wasteland to use at our disposal, the atomic bomb. Or we could even sell it for profit to another group. Who knows, maybe it's gonna blow up as soon as we fiddle with it, but it is what it is. At least we got the settlement. Overall, I love Megaton, and it's an iconic settlement of the Fallout games and amongst some of my most favorite post-apocalyptic communities. Like, when I first came upon it, I was in awe because I was like, holy shit, now this is what a post-apocalyptic community is supposed to be like. But with all that lovey-dovey shit out the way, I'm gonna say that it's a death trap, and if I'm being honest, I don't see this place holding up against anything more than a few raiders. Once a larger and more organized group wants what they've got, let's just say I'd rather walk to Rivet City from there instead of being inside it when it all goes down. Perhaps you agree with me, or maybe even disagree, or even have something else to add. Feel free to comment your thoughts down below because I'd love to hear it. So that's that, I'm Punk and Petty. I don't think it would be wise to be in Megaton when shit hits the fan, but hey, shelter is better than no shelter. Unless that shelter's next to a nuclear bomb. See ya.